Hi, my name is Deb and I'm an alcoholic. Um, Today I thought I would share my story. I've been posting little quotes for inspiration or food for thought, and I think it's finally time that I tell you a little bit more about myself. So I am one of seven children. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. My father was a coal miner. My mom was a homemaker. As you can imagine, with seven kids, somebody's got to take care of them. As far as I recall, I do not ever remember having alcohol in our home at all when I was growing up. My older siblings have told me that before I was born, my father had a problem with alcohol. And when my mother threatened to leave and take the children, he stopped. But in my personal recollection, I have no memory of him drinking or of having alcohol, except for the time when my brother came home from the army and my brother took my parents out to dinner and they came home a little bit drunk. And it was weird because I had never seen my parents drunk, or my brother for that matter. Later, I would come to see him drunk very often. He used alcohol as a coping mechanism for post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, as for me, I didn't drink during high school, never even tried alcohol during high school. Um, I lived really far out in the country, and so I had like an hour bus ride each way to school. So I was pretty isolated out there, and that was fine. I certainly didn't miss drinking or doing anything else. There was plenty to do at home with a busy home and everything that we had going on. So that was fine. Went to college, joined the college marching band, joined a sorority, plenty of opportunities for drinking in both of those organizations. Again, did not drink, did not participate in alcohol activities. I would be the one at sorority mixers who was sober. I would be the one at the Baratuba house sober. Um, and again, that was fine. It didn't seem to me that I was really missing out on anything. So, how did I come to start drinking is probably your question. Well, I finished college, started working full time at a university, and then when I was 28, decided to go to graduate school. And in that time, my cohort members and I, we would rotate weekends at each other's houses to do schoolwork, work on projects, and we would cook at somebody's house. And one day, someone brought a bottle of wine for us to share. No big deal, one bottle of wine, like four, maybe five people there. So social drinking was introduced into my life, and that was fine. I was able to manage that perfectly well, perfectly safely. I started going out with some of the people from work. We would play darts or foosball and have a couple of beers, some chicken wings. Again, not a problem. And then I finished graduate school, moved away to my first job when I was 30. And a couple years after that, I joined a community service organization that had a private bar. No, I am not blaming this. I'm not blaming my problem on this organization or the people in it. I am not. I just mention it to um, make you aware that suddenly I was alcohol was very available to me, and it was inexpensive and it was private. So it was small. It wasn't in a large setting. It felt safe. Um, so I'd go down, I would be doing community service work. People would send me a beer, they'd send me a gin and tonic. Um, it was actually gin and tonics that really became my thing. It was a beautiful day. We had had a picnic before a football game or something like that. And I was picking up and I was just kind of chilling outside, relaxing, catching my breath. And a gin and tonic came. And I thought, wow, this is super refreshing. It's super delicious. And on my way home that day, there's a liquor store on the corner, right around the corner from my apartment. So I stopped and I bought a bottle of gin. And I've never, until a year ago, 13 months ago, I never didn't have a bottle of gin in my apartment. It was just always there. And it started out okay. A gin and tonic on the porch in the evening while I was eating supper, watching people walk their dogs. That was all fine. Um, and then one became two in the evenings. And then um, one day, that second one replaced a meal. So instead of having supper with my partner, Kirk, I just enjoyed a second gin and tonic. And then it started getting earlier on the weekends, um, 1 o'clock and then noon and 11 o'clock. And then it wasn't long before it was as soon as I woke up, I would have a gin and tonic at 6:30 in the morning, Saturday and Sunday. In fact, by that point, I was only drinking gin and tonics if I was at home. I would get home from work at 4:30, have a gin and tonic, drink gin and tonic all night, get up, go to work, have a Sprite or water or lemonade, go home, gin and tonics all weekend, gin and tonics. And then it progressed to me needing to take a gin and tonic with me pretty much everywhere I went socially. So family picnics, um, drives. I'd have a 20-ounce Yeti in my hand that I would just have gin and tonic with. And even that seemed to me at the time like it was manageable. There was nothing wrong with that until I started needing a gin and tonic earlier in the afternoon. I'd start getting shaky and nauseated at like 2:30 or what really caught Kirk's attention is when I needed a little bit of gin and tonic at 6 in the morning on a weekday to get me prepared to go, to stop the shaking, to make me feel like I could face the day. And that went on for a while. He talked to me about my problem, and I pretty much ignored him. The bottle had become my best friend. I had slowly shut and closed off my world to the point that my girlfriends didn't matter. In fact, I did a lot of harm, I think, to my girlfriends because anytime we went out to dinner, there would always be drinks involved. But again, they could manage, they could start and stop. I was to the point where I could not stop if I started. And I always had to start at that point. Um, so I'm sure I caused them a lot of embarrassment. There are times I do not remember anything about going out to dinner with them, and they always drove me. I think because they were recognizing that I wasn't going to stop once I started. So somebody always picked me up, somebody always drove me home, but I wouldn't remember getting home. I wouldn't remember coming home and putting my leftovers away or changing into my pajamas or going to bed. I wouldn't remember any of that. And that happened frequently. That happened all the time. And it got to the point where the depressant and the alcohol was really affecting my mental health, and I became actually depressed. And I had begun to pray to God every night to use the health afflictions that carry around in my family to end my life. Please give me a heart attack. Please. Um, I would beg for this, that God would shut down all my organs and I would die. And at that point, if I was at home, I was drinking to pass out. Then I'd get up and drink again to pass out because I just wanted life to go by. I didn't want to participate. I did not want to be part of any of that. And that lasted a while, 9 months, maybe even a year, until I got so angry at God for not answering my prayers that I attempted suicide on February 7th, 2022, and ended up in the mental health unit. And that's when I realized God had answered my prayers. I had really been praying for help, and that is when I got the help I needed. And I remember being there even on the very first day, while I was being assessed, and I was hanging out just waiting to know if I was going to be admitted, which of course I was, because I had tried to harm myself. And in that evaluation, we talked about how much I was drinking. And I was honest for the first time. I was honest with myself. I was honest with another person, which is huge. The honesty piece really takes a weight off, and it felt very freeing. I felt at peace for the first time, and I don't remember how long. I had basically been living in a prison of my own creation. Uh, so I was at the mental health unit, and I they asked me if I wanted to go to rehab, and I said, "Yes, I do. I need to end this cycle. I need to get out of this. I can't live like this anymore." And so I ended up in rehab for the first time, the only time that I've been to rehab so far, knock on wood. And that was interesting. It was my first time ever being around um, addicts. So whether they were addicted to alcohol or they were addicted to another drug, it didn't matter because we all had an understanding of what the other one had been feeling and what they had gone through and what they had done to their families and what they had done to their bodies. And so that was nice. It was nice to be around a group of people who understood. I wasn't trying to answer what I considered stupid questions like, well, why don't you just stop? Or why don't you limit yourself to two? I didn't have to do that with those people because they were there for the same reason. When they started, they couldn't stop. Their lives had become unmanageable. And I was introduced to AA at that rehab. And I was, did my program. And then I came home. Kirk picked me up, and he had driven the 5 hours down to get me. And we drove the 5 hours back. And something that he told me immediately when we started the drive was that he couldn't do it again. If I started drinking again, if I started to drink again, he had to go. It was 5 years of pain and terror and frustration, and it took a lot. Oh, it took a lot out of him, but he stuck around. God love him. He stuck around with me and supported me, and still supports me to this day. We got home. He had rearranged the furniture in our apartment, so I wasn't walking back into the same environment I came out of. So I get home, and I had taken a leave of absence from my job. And so I entered into an intensive outpatient program locally to me. So I had group therapy 4 days a week, and I had my individual therapist once a week. And then I had my addiction counselor and the psychiatric nurse practitioner. And so I was doing all of those meetings. And then I found AA online. So I did AA online for a while. And then in-person meetings for AA started opening up, and I started going to those, and I joined a home group, and that was marvelous. And that felt like a good place to land. And through those few months of doing AA online, I managed to find a sponsor, and she's marvelous. And I'm working my steps. I'm finishing up step 4 right now. And that has been also a really, they say it's more freeing when you do step 5 and you share it with your sponsor. But to me, it's been empowering for me to really look at myself and be honest and put all of that down on paper and be willing to share that with someone else. So here we are, finishing up step 4. Um, and over the last 13 months, I would say that I've seen newcomers now, like very newcomers, first day people, first week people, people whose families have left them. And I find it very natural and honest. I'm not lying when I tell them that the 9-step promises come true. Um, Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, as the book says, sobriety at times. And my first 3 months were difficult. I was grieving the loss of my best friend, alcohol. I was grieving getting emotions back that I had been stuffing down. I was grieving all of those things that were coming up as a result of becoming more open and honest with myself and letting those things actually come out. I did a lot of reading that my therapist suggested, and really participated in my recovery so far. So for these first 13 and months and change, I can say that I am actively working my sobriety. And I will also admit one of my deepest fears is you hear the stories come in of people who have had a slip up or a relapse, and they tell you the problem was I got complacent. And that is one of my fears on my fear inventory, is becoming complacent and losing that drive to continue on my road to recovery and continued sobriety. So I basically spent a long time. Basically, I was living to die. I was just waiting for the days to pass by. And now Kirk and I are planning a future. We're planning a future I never thought that I would have, um, which sounds kind of stark when I think about it, and a little bit dark. But I didn't expect to live. I was hoping to die. And now I'm able to get up each morning and come to work and be participative and helpful. And that gave me a sense of purpose, and the routine of it helps, which is really good. I personally know boredom was one of my triggers at the very beginning when I first started to drink. Um, I didn't have a project to do or something else. And instead of just sitting down and reading a book or sitting down and watching a movie, I would sit down and do those things. But I would also have a drink in my hand because I liked the way it made me feel. So here I am, I'm 13 months later. I am still working on recovery. We will work on recovery every day. We have a disease that lasts forever. Um, but we manage it one day at a time. I manage it one day at a time. Sometimes I'm still managing it one moment at a time. I have to distract myself and keep myself busy, because if I don't, the thoughts crop in, and they can be very, very persuasive. And funny story about stopping the thoughts. I recently, within the last week, realized that I had kind of replaced alcohol when I came home with sugar, as most of us do. And I realized that I was exhibiting a lot of my addictive behaviors with ice cream. Seriously, ice cream. And I would start, I couldn't stop at certain times of day. That's when my brain and my body would say, okay, It's ice cream time. What are you doing? You just got home from a meeting. This is when you have your ice cream. So, the things that I've learned about dealing with my alcohol cravings and my sobriety from alcohol, I'm applying in other areas of my life. Certainly, practicing the steps is applicable to all aspects of our life, and I'm very, very grateful that I have the program, and it literally keeps me positive every day, keeps me from stressing out about things that I don't need to stress out about. It's become more natural to shut my alcoholic brain off and assume what other people are thinking about me because I don't know what they're thinking. And really, it's none of my business what they're thinking. So, this is my story to date, day 399. And I hope that you will keep on watching and keep coming back. And I will continue to post. I'm about to have dinner out with some girlfriends for the first time, and I'll be sure and post about how that went. I'm not sure. I have been canceling and canceling and canceling, and finally I decided I can't cancel anymore. I have to go out and live life. If I'm going to plan a future, I need to plan a present. And so it's time. It's time to go do those things. So thank you for watching. Leave any comments that you want about your own recovery, about how you dealt with cravings, about how your moment came when you realized you were powerless over alcohol. Please, let's start a conversation. Let's normalize conversations about addiction and mental illness because there's still a stigma, and we need to break that stigma to pieces. So thank you, and I'll see you soon on Deb's Sober Days.